Sveiki įsijungę Naujausią Lietuva Amerika seriją, kaip visad aš esu su jumis, Vincentas Polubinskas, o prieš pristatant pačią naujausią mūsų seriją, trumpa naujiena. Padarysime 2 savaičių pertrauką. Šią ateinančią savaitę mes su kolegomis iš Jaunųjų konservatorių lygos būsime Ukrainoje konferencijoje ir aplankysime prie to pačio ir karius fronte, ir taip pat labdaros ir paramos organizacijas. Kaip bebūtų keista, savaitę po to, kai mes jau būsime grįžę iš Ukrainos, keliaus į Ukrainą taip pat ir mano kolega Žygimantas Pavilionis. Tai dėja teks palaukti 2 savaičių iki naujos serijos. Tačiau pažadam, kad per tą laiką mes tikrai iš Ukrainos parsivešime labai daug medžiagos, interviu tiek su politikais, tiek su įvairiais įtakingais visuomenės veikėjais ir parnešime naujienų bei, tikiuosi, jums įdomių interviu. O grįžtant prie šiandienos serijos, šiandienos serija yra su Matthew Bryza, buvusiu Amerikos ambasadoriumi Azerbaidžane, protingu, tikrai įžvalgiu žmogumi. Jis per šią seriją tikrai labai daug ką įdomus pasakys, ypač apie šį naujausią Armėnijos ir Azerbaidžano susitarimą tiek dėl taikos, tiek dėl naujų šitų dujų vamzdžių ir panašiai, kaip čia pasakius. Tai tikrai labai įdomi serija ir paliečia tikrai pačias įdomiausias naujienas, kurios gali iš esmės pakeisti visą Kaukazo regiono veidą. Tai linkiu pasiklausyti, tikrai mano galva įdomi serija. Gerą klausimą.
And sorry to wake up you so early.
No, I've been up since 6 or 6:30, and I'm in the middle of my workout. So jet lag is working. This is the best time, totally in my favor. Like I can't sleep, so it's great. It's perfect time. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, can I introduce first Vincentas? So he is like 3rd generation Lithuanian American whose grandfather returned from Chicago, from Colorado. We just,
What?
So one of those 3 immigrants who is building Lithuania right now.
Well, how beautiful. Vincentus, I just returned to LA from Chicago. So that's your, I guess.
Wow, wonderful.
Your new later ethnic homeland, but not back to your original one. That's beautiful. Great to meet you.
To some extent, exactly. Well,
So
it's a pleasure
I don't know,
to
knowing that your time is precious and this is the morning, let maybe start by, first of all, telling a bit about yourself. I know you like 23 years in diplomacy, actually the same number of years like I did in diplomacy, and I said goodbye and, went to politics. Few words about you, and then, I don't know, maybe let's talk, we know each other 20 years already, we remember Russia-Georgia war, what happened. So from this perspective, when this podcast will be released, it will be already, Alaska already will be 2 days gone.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
let's be strategic. But Matt, first of all about you, if you can remind your fights.
Sure. And yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 20 years. I was a diplomat for 23 years. And I'll never forget you. I mean, when the first meeting was whatever, that Nordic U.S. security dialogue, you, Kai Ida, we were together at the State Department, and I just was listening to this guy, this undersecretary, and I'm like, holy crap, this guy is sharp. We have the same spirit, the same everything in terms of values. So my background is, as a proud Polish American, and we were, one state for a while, yeah. The reason I became a diplomat was because I wanted to be involved in what I hoped would be a transition away from that system of tyranny to a system of political and economic freedom, which miraculously, thanks to you all, there is. So my diplomatic career began in Poland in 1989. I was the first day of work for me was the first day of free market prices, not in the entire economy, but in much of it. I was responsible. My first posting was in our consulate general in Poznan, which we no longer have. And my responsibility, besides processing visas, was to get to know the leaders of Solidarity in Western Poland. And it was great. Andrzej Gwiazda and Andrzej Milczanowski. Milczanowski became the head of Poland's intelligence services as they were trying to clear out the stooges of the KGB. And so I moved to Warsaw the next year and had an amazing network of contacts to kind of be observing and trying to move the normalization, restoration, and building of a strategic partnership between a future set of NATO allies and the United States. So I later worked on the Russia desk at the State Department. Then I switched over to a job at the White House and State Department, helping the countries, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, develop a network of oil and gas pipelines that became the gas part, the Southern Corridor, that the EU now relies on to bring natural gas from Azerbaijan to diversify supplies of oil and gas. After that, I spent 4 years on the National Security Council staff. I was responsible for our relations with Turkey, Greece, Cyprus, South Caucasus, and Central Asia, and these pipeline projects. Then I returned to the State Department and implemented those ideas as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and finally finished up as U.S. Ambassador to Azerbaijan 13 years ago. And since then, I've lived in Istanbul, where I directed a think tank in Tallinn, Estonia, the International Center for Defense and Security. There founded the cybersecurity and energy security programs. I was a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, but now I'm full-time in business. I'm on the board of some companies in energy, engineering, American, British, Turkish, and I oversee on the other side of the Atlantic the operations of a consultancy, risk management and corporate strategy consultancy called Strafe, based in Houston. And also I'm a partner at the parent company that's a private equity firm called Abert Capital. So sorry to go on so long, but that's my full background.
So, okay, I don't know, Vincent, maybe I will make first kind of political question. Let's talk narrowly Caucasus, because you've been known as one of the best on Caucasus, and you live close to Caucasus and you circulate there. From the perspective of 20 years, how do you see it? Georgia was up and now down, but on the other hand, we just heard great news about Armenia and Azeris, making historic deal. So overall, is it moving west? And maybe a bit linking to Crimea situation. One of the Americans recently told Zhigis, we cannot lose Crimea to Russians. If we're losing Crimea to Russians, all our achievements in Caucasus will be gone because, Russia controls the Black Sea, then it controls the Caucasus, and then it blocks the Central Asia access. So how do you see it all?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that geopolitical insight, but I'm not that pessimistic because Russia does control Crimea now, and it's totally losing influence in Azerbaijan and Armenia, but gaining it in Georgia. And the gains in Georgia don't really have to do with Ukraine and Crimea. They have to do with sort of a misfiring of democratic institutions in Georgia. And what do I mean? Just like in the United States, a lot of people are arguing that President Donald Trump is undermining certain institutions or mechanisms of democracy. I mean, that's a separate topic we could talk about forever. In Georgia, the democratic institutions that we all worked to help Georgia build after the Rose Revolution in 2003 were used by Bidzina Ivanishvili and his pro-Russian, pro-Moscow Georgian Dream movement to undermine democracy. They were elected democratically. It was a free and fair election. Then President Misha Saakashvili recognized it, essentially stepped aside, and initially the Georgian Dream had people in it, like Irakli Alsania and others, who was deputy prime minister and defense minister, who came out of that whole Rose Revolution pedigree and were firmly committed to democracy and the integration of Georgia into the transatlantic community, and then were undermined by pro-Moscow forces. So Georgia has reversed course, but over the last couple of years, Azerbaijan and Armenia have accelerated their move toward the West. Now, in the case of Azerbaijan, it's been an attempt to maintain a multi-vector policy. So Azerbaijan, 20 plus years ago, even 30 years ago, almost 25 years ago, actively with our assistance and the assistance of the government of Turkey, and then investors like BP and Turkish Petroleum, etc., secured its independence and through connectivity with Europe through these oil and gas pipelines that we helped develop. It was a physical connection in steel underground and an economic and geoeconomic connection. So then Azerbaijan tried to play it kind of carefully, didn't want to alienate Russia, but had calm and security in knowing it was geoeconomically now connected to the transatlantic family, and then began using its revenues to build up its military capabilities and rebuild them. And as President Aliyev said to me when I was the U.S. mediator of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, along with Russian and French counterparts, he said, look, you can see I'm negotiating in good faith, and I will, until it seemed clear that Armenia is no longer committed to good faith negotiations. And in 2019, Prime Minister Pashinyan and his defense minister both announced the Land for Peace formula that we have been working on with the OSCE's Minsk group is no longer valid. Our new formula is new wars for new territories, meaning new Azerbaijani territories, and meaning we're ready to go to war to try to secure control not only of the Azerbaijani territories we already occupy, but maybe more. I think that was a signal for President Aliyev. Negotiations are over, and it's time to use military force, which is, as we all know from Bernard Brody and von Clausewitz and others, military force is a tool of diplomacy, and war is the continuation of politics by other means. So when that happened, Azerbaijan attracted a lot of criticism from the United States, from the European Union for having used force, and was sort of in a geostrategic limbo. Armenia, meanwhile, disappointed that Russia, under the Collective Security Treaty Organization, didn't intervene to stop Azerbaijan, began to withdraw from its traditional centuries-long dependence on Russia for its security, to reorient toward wanting to align more with the US and Europe for its security. So that war that Armenia lost decisively pushed Armenia away from Russia. By the way, Russia had no obligation to intervene because the war was on Azerbaijani territory, Nagorno-Karabakh and the 7 occupied territories. It wasn't on Armenian territory. Matters not. Armenia moved away from Russia, and now, just in the last few months, based on the Trump administration's diplomacy, culminating in these agreements last Friday, Azerbaijan and the U.S. now have established some sort of a strategic partnership, and these agreements that we'll talk about, I'm sure, were brokered by the U.S. president in a way that I had always hoped would happen. I have said for years and years, the only way there's going to be a lasting peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan is if the United States, and I'm almost done here, brings the full credibility and clout and diplomatic force of the U.S. president to make it happen. The French, one of the other 2 co-chairs of the Minsk group, can't do it because they're too weak. Nobody cares what the French think, with all due respect. And the Russians are seen as being biased, right? They want the conflict to continue so they can meddle and so they can play sides off of each other. Only the U.S. president could play this role. We got kind of close in June of 2009, but President Obama wasn't ready to lean in, and neither then President Serge Sarkisian, nor President Ilham Aliyev were ready. This time, because of all the stuff I laid out there just now, both Aliyev and Pashinyan were ready, as was Trump. So, longest answer in history, we do see Georgia moving in the wrong direction, but running out of money, the government, but Azerbaijan and Armenia definitely now moving toward Europe, or really the United States, and toward Europe. I promise not to give you such long answers to everything.
Well, this is all very interesting. If I may ask, in short, just to dumb it down for the simple man that I am, what can we expect the lasting outcome, if it can be lasting, of this peace treaty and this the strategic partnership to be? That's my first question. And my second question is something that we hear a lot about these days is as a result of this peace treaty is the idea of an oil pipeline or a gas pipeline, going from through Armenia and Azerbaijan, right? And I understand this to be a huge middle finger, so to say, to the Russians, right? Could you walk us through how that works and what that looks like?
Sure, good questions. Great questions, Vincenta. So, number one, there's the only thing we can be certain of is that Russia will try to undermine these agreements, and they'll rely on active measures to try to maybe oust, certainly destabilize Pashinyan and Armenia's political system. That's been going on, since the Second Karabakh War, when Pashinyan agreed to a ceasefire that really marked a defeat for Armenia. What's kind of, I think, moderated Russia till now had been that Putin signed the ceasefire statement with Prime Minister Pashinyan and President Aliyev, and so he wanted this ceasefire arrangement of November 2020 to succeed. Now that's been completely supplanted by this new agreement brokered by Trump. So I think it's inevitable that Russia will try to undermine this agreement. A second thing I think is certain is that a consortium of U.S. logistics companies will try to come together to be able to operate the new corridor you're referring to, Vincentus. But what's uncertain is whether or not Trump will remain focused. He may move on to, pursue his Nobel Peace Prize, the quest for which I think really motivated his involvement now. So he may move on to other conflicts. I know that I personally, as a business person now operating at the intersection of geopolitics and business, will do everything I can to help such a consortium flourish and to attract investment to it. But I don't know that that'll succeed. So if it does succeed, if there is this corridor, it will hopefully include a natural gas pipeline, should also then include potentially oil pipeline, should include fiber optic lines, because the route from the Caspian in Azerbaijan through Armenia into Turkey and beyond is much more efficient, much more direct than the one that goes through Georgia. And as we've already talked about, Georgia's geopolitical future is now in question. So to get right to your question, Russia doesn't get a vote. They're going to try to destabilize the situation and not let the corridor happen. But as our ambassador in Moscow back in the early 2000s said to me when we were pursuing the initial round of oil and gas pipelines that go from Azerbaijan to Georgia to Turkey, he said, "Don't worry about Russia's reaction. Just create facts on the ground. They can't stop it. And the pipelines, as long as the countries want them." And that was true then. And if you look back to Russia's invasion of Georgia in August 2008, Russia didn't touch those pipelines, right? Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline kept on operating. South Caucasus gas pipeline kept on operating. Yes, there were some Iskander missiles fired near that oil pipeline, but they didn't hit it. They could have hit it. They didn't. They were sending a warning, trying to use fear as a tool of diplomacy, and the West called Russia's bluff. So I think that's the same thing that will happen this time, but it's all contingent on the corridor actually moving forward, which requires, frankly, Pashinyan to survive in office for these next couple of years.
Matt, just finally, to consolidate this development, as Lithuanian experience, or Polish experience is saying, you need to move to EU and NATO, because Russia will always be attacking you, killing you, poisoning you, just you feel a bit more secure in EU and NATO. It's not like 100% guarantee, but it's much better. We are happy, we are strong, and we are arming ourselves to teeth and waiting for Russians, but we feel secure in EU and NATO. So do you think that this region might go to the same direction? Because I was talking with some Armenian, I said, do you think of applying to at least EU membership? Because even if Georgia is moving down, this is the only way that would keep the region in balance. And even like going so far as NATO, it's also, hour of Turkey in the Caucasus. Why not to help, the region to go to our transatlantic family? Or is it too ambitious? Or Russians will go crazy again?
Well, I very much agree with you that unless and until the countries of the South Caucasus are the members of NATO, Russia will constantly meddle and forever try to undermine them. However, there's not anywhere near a consensus in Azerbaijan and Armenia to seek NATO or EU membership. It's just not out there yet. Because for centuries, as we were saying, I mean, Armenia, the sort of reflexive security response has been look to Russia to protect Armenians against the Turkic peoples to the east in Azerbaijan and the west in Turkey. And when it comes to Azerbaijan, Russia still has not only a huge amount of influence, but is seen in a positive way in Azerbaijan. I mean, the intellectual elites of Azerbaijan, especially Baku, they all speak Russian. And President Aliyev has, again, as aggressively as he led and his father led Azerbaijan toward partnerships with Western oil and gas companies and the European Union, they were also careful not to create unnecessary irritation with Russia. And if you go back finally to I think it was last November, President Putin made the first visit of any Russian president to Baku. And at that point, it was all sweetness and light. And President Aliyev was talking about enduring strategic partnership with Russia until Russian air defenses shot down so horribly, tragically, that Azerbaijani airliner on Christmas Eve, I think it was it Christmas Day anyway, last year. And then since Putin has not had the courage to take responsibility and therefore apologize and therefore pay reparations to the victims' families, President Aliyev has been furious, and the relationship between Azerbaijan and Russia has precipitously deteriorated. But having said that, given where Azerbaijan sits, the only country in the world with borders both with Russia and Iran, Azerbaijan will be much more cautious. So you mentioned Turkey, and that is the key. Turkey playing a positive role as NATO's eyes and ears and muscle on the ground in Azerbaijan is key. After the Second Karabakh War, Turkey insisted on, and Aliyev insisted on, Turkey having peacekeeping role. It was much smaller than Russia's in Azerbaijan at the time, but it still was a peacekeeping role, which meant NATO was present in Azerbaijan after that Second Karabakh War, and it needs to remain there. And then finally, hopefully, we'll see normalization of Armenia-Turkey relations. It's coming. Both countries have been pursuing that for a long time. I mean, I'm in touch with the people working on that, and obviously, that normalization will occur once Azerbaijan and Armenia have signed their peace treaty, and the agreements just the other day included the initialing by the foreign ministers of the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace treaty, the text of which was finalized last March. So everything's ready to go for signature by the national leaders once Armenia amends its constitution to remove ambiguity about Karabakh being part of Azerbaijan rather than maybe possibly independent or part of Armenia. Once that amendment happens, the leaders will sign the peace treaty, but Russia is trying to prevent that. But President Trump's clout is what Prime Minister Pashinyan hopes to rely on to persuade the Armenian parliament to make that amendment to the constitution. So once that happens, we will see then normalization of relations between Armenia and Turkey and a new kind of a unique calculus for NATO. We haven't really relied, I think, to this point on a NATO member state to bring along or to help protect other countries that maybe aren't going to join NATO, but to deter Russia from there. And then I think in Trump's mind, having a U.S. company rather than Russian FSB troops operating that corridor from Azerbaijan through Armenia to Nakhchivan, the exclave of Azerbaijan, that Trump hopes in some way provides some sort of a security guarantee, such as Trump hopes will happen in Ukraine by virtue of the critical minerals deal. I'm not sure military security works that way, but that's the Trump vision.
Well, I mean, this all sounds very well and good, but I mean, I can't help imagining Caucasus politics and regional politics without mentioning Georgia once again. And albeit they are, or they seem to be, quite in the chokehold of the Kremlin right now, but won't this normalization of relations and maybe this new era of peace in the Caucasus, won't that seem in some sense tantalizing, or even might it even inspire the Georgian people to fight even harder for democracy, for peace, and for all the good things in life? Do you see that as a possibility?
I sure hope so. I mean, over 80% of the Georgian public favors NATO and EU membership. But that's been true throughout this period of Georgian Dream rule. And so the Georgian Dream has lied to the Georgian people and said, EU membership is our goal. And then they undermine it at every turn. So, yeah, Georgian people, the majority of people understand what's going on. They reject it. There are protests constantly, right? Constantly in Tbilisi. When those protests, or if they ever reach critical mass, nobody knows. That's completely unpredictable. A monopoly on force is intimidating and it's scary. If you're a college kid protesting on the streets of Tbilisi and they're firing rubber bullets or live ammunition at you, they have water cannons, they have tanks, they have armored personnel carriers, that's scary. And so, there's constantly this need for the leadership to roll the dice. At some point they decide we're going to use force and crush this. Edward Shevardnadze never did that. He, at the end of the day, though he was a Soviet leader, he was a decent human being and realized he doesn't want to kill these people that he loved. I mean, one anecdote. I don't want to drag this on too long, but I know from God rest his soul, Zurab Zhvania, who passed away, who was, became prime minister of Georgia. Yeah, Zhigis knew him well. He loved you, Zhigis. God rest his soul. He explained to me how when Zurab and Misha Saakashvili met Shevardnadze for the culminating meeting, when they said, you have to step down now, Mr. President, because these demonstrations have reached critical mass, and it's either you kill us all or you step aside. And Zurab said they all started crying, all three of them, hugging each other, saying, we love you, we love each other. Shevardnadze saying, I love you. They saying, we love you. And Shevardnadze said, okay, I'll step aside. And he did, right? And that was the Rose Revolution. I don't see the current leaders of Georgia having that in them. The prime minister is ridiculous. He's a puppet of Ivanishvili, right? He's a joke. And Trump will pay no attention to them. And Ivanishvili, his money is all, control or comes from Moscow. But the one thing, Vincentus, that could be hopeful, because as you said, the Georgian people are going to be even more motivated to do what they've been doing to keep their country moving toward Europe, just like in the Maidan, right, in 2014. Or November 2013, it was Yanukovych's announcement that Ukraine wasn't going to pursue association with the EU that triggered the revolution. Well, it's entirely possible that as the Georgian government runs out of money, because it's running out of money, Russia doesn't have money to prop it up much more, then the largesse that Ivanishvili has used, the payments to the population, the subsidization, will run out, and that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But they're not there yet, only because of what I think was happening with Azerbaijan and Armenia. But maybe they'll get there.
Okay, let's move to most difficult part of our discussion, because it's all connected. Ukraine deal. When I was listening to you, Matt, I thought, oh my God, I'm missing people like you in Washington, who scream freedom, who push freedom, who fight for it. We've been exchanging ideas. We've been doing it together. Now it's like Obama reverse, to be honest. Yeah. I was serving under Obama. It was tough. Now again, the same tough situation. Whenever American president is meeting with Putin, the Lithuanians have all the troubles on this planet. So, okay. So we just discussed that it's like Russian money is non-available because they spent all the money on the front lines. So
Yep.
it would be kind of wise for Americans to struck the source of that money, to introduce those crashing sanctions. And it seems it's working. Even the threat of like stopping flow of Russian oil to India actually paralyzed Putin. He went to Alaska, so it's working. Why don't we kill the beast? Why don't we, push that Russian, old-fashioned Russian empire from everywhere, from Caucasus, from Moldova, from Ukraine, from the Baltics, and actually from Africa, from Latin America, everywhere where Americans have problems, it is created by Russian empire. So, but when I hear, the ideas of Witkoff or some other guys around Vice President, sometimes Trump, if Putin moves to the deal, we will open economic relations. So you will feed the tiger again. Russians will have money to feed Georgian Dream, to do all the nasty operations in Armenia and Azerbaijan against the Baltics. Why do we have to feed the tiger, especially when it feeds another tiger, China, that is just looking how to kill those, Americans and the leadership in the world? So do you think after this unfortunate Alaska meet, maybe, Putin will surprise us again by his stupidity, but, can America be back feeling the American interest? I mentioned also Crimea. It's an American interest to have the Black Sea, free Black Sea for trade, for commerce, to have Baltics and Central Europeans and Ukrainians maneuvering to Caucasus. It's great to at least to create that link between North and South and Black Sea. It's like strategic. Why do you think Americans are destroying their own interest in that region by empowering the beast?
Yeah, I mean, Jigis, you are known as one of the great strategic thinkers and champions, not just of political and economic freedom, but of these strategic interests that are so obvious to anyone who knows history. And so, someone might think that your question is rhetorical because your views are so clear. It's not rhetorical at all. It's the question that needs to be asked because, yes, these are the ones you described, fundamental U.S. strategic interests that need to be protected. The problem is that neither J.D. Vance, nor Donald Trump, nor Steve Witkoff know history nor care about it. Maybe J.D. Vance knows a bit about history, but he just doesn't care. But Trump and Witkoff, they don't know anything about history. They're not interested. Trump doesn't care about it. Trump and Witkoff are real estate developers. They are completely inexperienced in diplomacy. And because they are so ignorant of history, they think every problem is easy to resolve and that professionals or political people or people like us are not bold enough or not smart enough to come up with the solutions, or we're part of some weird deep state that doesn't exist. And so they operate on a concept, it's just not a term of art, I just made it up, but it's the arrogance of ignorance. If you're ignorant about the complexity of history into the present day, you can arrogantly think you can resolve anything just like a Manhattan or Queens or Long Island property deal. It's easy. I'm so smart. I'm so rich. These bureaucrats are part of a corrupt deep state and they just don't know how to fix things. That's the problem. And I also totally agree that what has to happen to change things is for Putin to behave so arrogantly himself and stupidly himself again and believe his own propaganda again, like the stupidity, even though Ukrainians did not rise up in 2014 during the first Russian invasion of Ukraine and welcome Russian troops, he still believed they would in 2022. And of course they didn't. Ukrainians will always fight. My Polish family comes from, Eastern Poland or Western Ukraine. Ukrainians will always fight. So he has convinced himself, Putin, that Trump is a dope, is a stooge, and he can just flatter him and string Trump along. Now, Trump has learned his lesson, as he said in recent months. He's just being tapped along by Putin, he said. And the Senate now has prepared that bill with huge sanctions, not only on Russia, but on India and on China, the 500% tariffs, secondary sanctions for using, for buying Russian oil. It is only It is only by cutting off Russian oil revenues that Putin will ever be squeezed into stopping his war on Ukraine. So we have to get to that point. Trump was moving in that direction when he was angry. He operates impulsively and on anger. So hopefully Putin will anger him enough at this next meeting. But the initial signs are poor, right? So everything was on track the way I said. Witkoff goes to Moscow. I don't know if, again, this time, but his previous meeting with Putin, he didn't even have an interpreter with him. So he doesn't really understand what's being said. We know Trump desperately wants to see Putin and get along with him. He's looking for any excuse to get back together with him. So Witkoff brought that back to Trump, probably not even understanding what he's bringing back. Putin has made clear he is not softening his maximalist goals at all. So Trump is going to be disappointed. But I don't know. I mean, Putin is great at manipulating Trump. So last point, look at where the meeting's taking place. Not only on U.S. soil, unbelievable, it de-isolates Putin, but Alaska, the place that was acquired by the U.S. from Russia. So subconsciously, without even saying anything, Putin is sending a message. You took our territory, we can take Ukraine's. And I think Trump doesn't even realize that. Witkoff certainly doesn't. So Putin will keep on trying to manipulate Trump. And again, just like in the case of the Georgian people, will that critical mass or that threshold be met, like in a chemical experiment, right? Or a chemical process? You can heat the solution, and just you add a little more heat at some point, and the solid comes out, the precipitate comes out, or there's some sort of an explosion. We're in that process, but nobody knows where that threshold is that leads to that breaking of Trump vis-a-vis Putin.
Thanks for your honesty, Matt. I still believe in America after people like you. So,
Yeah,
Vincent, your last word.
Thank you. God bless you.
I don't even know what to add. I mean, this is absolutely the way it is. I find it so incredibly frustrating that, I mean, in your exact words, that this is all so symbolic and the meaning is all there, but it just seems that Trump and the White House just don't get it. And especially these days when the Russians love to bandy about their banners, claiming Alaska as their own, and that's where they're having this, world-changing conference. It does. Frankly speaking, it really does lower my faith in America and in the world order that we built around America.
Yeah, one last historical comment and then one sort of more spiritual one. Historically, right, what Trump wants is to carve up Europe or Ukraine with Putin. Molotov-Ribbentrop too. If Trump knew history, he would know the U.S. and Soviet or Russian leader carving up Europe over the heads of Eastern Europeans. It's what Stalin did with Hitler. And I don't know why international media isn't talking about Putin behaving the way Stalin did with Hitler, except doing it with Trump. It's impolite to allude to Trump being like Hitler, but that is historically that is what's happening. Spiritually, sad news. I just learned before I came down that Vlad Sokor passed away yesterday. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he had suddenly found out in recent weeks he had pancreatic cancer. Glenn Howard told me just now he was responding. He just started chemotherapy, Vlad did, and his doctor thought the prognosis was okay, and just passed away. So I know. Okay. He really loved you.
Condolences. I would conclude like that. Well, we are fighting and dying, but Matt, our ideas are right. We did a lot of good stuff. Look to Central Europe. Look to the Baltics. Look to the Nordics in NATO. Look to these positive developments in Caucasus. I was just recently in Moldova. I will be back again for elections. Ukrainians are fighting, and even Russians themselves.
Yeah.
Do they really want to live in that mess? It's stupid what Putin does with their own country. It's going against the interest of Russia itself because it's becoming a slave of China. China is just using that situation. So let's keep fighting. I know it's difficult. I know sometimes it seems hopeless, but let's connect the best of us and I still think that we will be able to win, because it's like it's stupid to live in Siberia. It's stupid to live in concentration camps and die. It's much better to live and enjoy the life and, build Los Angeles, everywhere.
I agree.
Yeah.
We need more of you. We need more President Adamkus, who brought the plane to Tbilisi in 2008. And let's keep fighting together, because that is, history has been brutal to so many peoples, but something has changed in the last century. And, human welfare is at its highest level in history now. So the overall trend is good. So let's keep moving it in the good direction. Thank you.
And just final note, I'm ending a book about Zbig, another big American Pole. And it's so interesting to see, his ups and downs, different administrations, one listening, one not. But he finally made it through, his ideas, change the world. So let's keep changing it.
All right, let's go.
Have our moment. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for everything you did for us, for the region, for Caucasus. We have to finish the job.
Yep. Thanks for the partnership all these years, dear friend, and for being one of the first visitors to my sweet daughter, Maya, when she was born at our house with Simonas. I'm going upstairs to our room right now to hug her. So thank you.
Regards to your family, to Zain also. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Na, tikiuosi ši serija jums patiko, man tai tikrai. Ir didelė garbė kalbėtis tokiu iš tiesų, manau, laisvės ir demokratijos vanagu. Tad linkiu jums gerų ateinančių 2 savaičių. Jeigu turite nuomonių apie šiandienos epizodą, drąsiai komentuokite, rašykite tiek Spotify, tiek YouTube, tiek man ir Žygimantui asmeniškai į Facebooką, Messengerį, galite visur mus rasti. O linkiu mums vėl susimatyti po 2 savaičių. Iki.